All right, this is the Meet the Press Roundtable, obviously discussing various issues.
I'll dig into a couple things in the Kane interview, but before we do that, simple state of the race. Mark Halperin, you've seen campaigns lost in August. Obviously, we know they're not quote-unquote won in August. Maybe in hindsight we will. Is this that kind of week for Donald Trump?
He had so many problems now, not just in the horse race, but in certain demographic groups. It was always going to be challenging for any Republican against any Democrat to build a demographic coalition to get to 270 electoral votes. Donald Trump's performance over the last 10 days has made that harder. It's hard to see right now where he gets, again, the demographics to add up to 270. It is August. He does have debates. But on the trajectory he's on, this would not be a close race.
Hugh Hewitt, where's the point of no return?
Not until September. I don't applaud it, I don't endorse it, but the fact of the American electorate is that if Donald Trump walks out on September 6th, the day after Labor Day, and announces Trump, a new season, the candidate, and says that was last season and I completely changed and I'm running now, then a lot of Americans in a reality mindset, reality TV mindset, will accept that and give him a second chance. They're very cheered by the Reuters Ipsos poll, which we talked about. A lot of people don't put credibility in it. It's 3%. They're not beleaguered like the 15% Marist poll. So it's far from over, and September will tell.
I think the problem with that is if it was one thing, if it was just that the candidate's temperament is difficult to manage, if it was just that they don't have a ground game in the swing states, don't have resources deployed in key states, and if it wasn't that the bad week came immediately after what is supposed to be the golden week for any campaign, right after your convention, Donald Trump actually stepped into Hillary Clinton's convention time to make himself the issue. So the fact that he immolated in that very important 10 days after the conventions, and that now you're going to have this long August where people are not necessarily top of mind thinking about the candidates, and now the image of him has been ingrained. He's going to come into September with that image already baked in the electorate, and he doesn't have a ground game with which to sort of fix his campaign in the important states.
Yeah, Mish, there's always a but, though, when we talk about, in fact, this week, there's always been a but, and the but is Hillary Clinton, trustworthiness, and emails. And before, because you've been reporting on this, I want to play Hillary Clinton's response. It would have been part of the montage that I used with Senator Kaine, except it happened right when I was interviewing Senator Kaine. Here's what she said about emails on Friday.
I have said during the interview and in many other occasions over the past months that what I told the FBI, which he said was truthful, is consistent with what I have said publicly. So I may have short-circuited it, and for that, I, will try to clarify.
I mean, she cannot seem to. She's got to clarify. I mean, she herself just said, "I got to clarify again." This is a year now.
If you're Hillary Clinton, the last words that you want to be saying this summer are "I have to clarify" or "I'm short-circuited." The idea that she's still talking about this and it's still mushy and people are still wondering how you haven't come to a kind of clear answer on this, to me, goes to the fact that she has real credibility issues. But of course, the issue here is that Donald Trump, the demographics that Donald Trump needs to win this election are the constituencies that I think are going to have a real problem, even if he comes out after Labor Day and says, "I'm a new Donald Trump." You already had a track record of really offending some of the main people that you need to win this election. And I was just having a conversation with Republican strategists just last night, because I went to the convention for the National Association of Black Journalists, and said, well, do you have some secret formula that I don't know about that maybe doesn't include the key constituencies in Florida and Ohio? And they said, no, we were pushing him to talk in front of the NABJ, we were pushing him to talk in front of the National Urban League, and he just didn't want to do it. He felt like it was a hostile situation, it was a hostile group. So I think that that's going to really go to the problems that he's going to have.
Can I just say that on the emails, I think the blessing and the curse for Hillary Clinton is that the email story is complicated. So the curse for her is that trying to explain it, her answers are so detailed and complicated that when you're explaining, you're losing.
Sounds like a lawyer.
But it's also so complicated that when you talk to voters about it, they don't really get it. What they do understand is that they have Gmail, so that it doesn't sound like it's something criminal, so that when Donald Trump goes over the top and tries to say that it's something criminal, he kind of loses the audience too. So it's a blessing and a curse.
Short circuit is Portuguese for "I did not tell the truth," and they understand short circuit meant "I'm sorry, I did not tell the truth." Her problem is trustworthiness.
I thought Short Circuit was a bad 80s movie.
So she reinforced her worst thing. Trump's worst thing is he got a Sulla problem. Sulla, the Roman dictator, had on his tomb, "No friend has done me a favor, nor enemy an injury that I have not repaid in full." And he lives that every single day. So her dishonesty and his enemies list are the two competing narratives.
You know, Mark, I do get the sense, though, that we may be getting to the point where Hillary Clinton gets in the, I'm done answering emails and I'm not going to do it anymore. And I'll be curious to see how that plays out.
I believe that's where her campaign has her. Is they do feel they need to clean up what happened last Sunday. But for now, they don't think they're going to lose on trustworthiness. Trump's trustworthy numbers aren't much better. They're roughly equal in most. His
trustworthy numbers, honesty and trustworthy are better.
They're about equal. I mean, she's narrowed the gap there. I believe, as superficial as a lot of this election has been, this is going to come down to the economy and who people think will make their lives better. And on that score, both of them still have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, they do. All right, I want to pause here. We're going to talk more about the... There was something that happened this week among all the different headlines that kind of got lost. Paul Ryan, fundraising email, said this: if we fail to protect our majority in Congress, we could be handing President Hillary Clinton a blank check. Mark Halperin, President Hillary Clinton, a blank check. That was not too subtle of a signal that says, Republicans, you're on your own.
1990 and 1996, the Republican Party basically abandoned their president and said, we got to run on our own. Why does a congressional wing stay loyal in tough times? One is if you think you have a confluence of interests. Right now they still do, but Paul Ryan's hinting that perhaps by the fall they won't. The other is personal loyalty. Most members of Congress don't know Donald Trump. The reason picking Mike Pence was a good idea, amongst other things, is they do know Mike Pence, and I think Mike Pence will keep them loyal personally until and unless they decide you got to tell voters, don't give Hillary Clinton a blank check. We've seen the party do it before.
Yamiche, you've been doing a bunch of reporting on this issue. What are Republicans telling you?
Republicans are telling me that as of right now that they want to try to wait for Donald Trump to pivot. We've been waiting for that pivot, or they've been waiting for that pivot for a long time. But really, they're seeing that they're vulnerable in these places, that even though they have this big lead in the House, the Senate is very vulnerable. And at some point you say, how do we stick with this candidate? How do we stick with this message? And I think within the Republican Party, people are trying to pressure Donald Trump to say different things and to do different things and to try to be unifying. But even just this week, with the fact that he was holding out endorsing Paul Ryan, that shows that he's not as interested in party in some ways as people want him to be.
Keep in mind that it's a high-risk strategy the longer you wait, because we now live in a world where you do have early voting. So there's a possibility that if Donald Trump is still being Donald Trump well after Labor Day, you get in October and people are already voting. So he could be day-to-day losing voters in real time.
You know, Hugh, the risk is both ways. This is what Glenn Bolger, Republican pollster, sort of one of the best in the business, partner in POS, they do one half of our poll. He says this in the New York Times today. Do we run the risk of depressing our base by repudiating the guy, or do we run the risk of being tarred and feathered by independents for not repudiating him? We're damned if we do and damned if we don't.
The good news is Speaker Ryan, who is really the leader of the party. Donald Trump is the nominee and leads part of the party, and Leader McConnell's in there. But Leader Ryan is really the guy who leads. He's talented enough to walk between Scylla and Charbonnet. He is able to thread this needle. I think he does it by directing fire not at Donald Trump, but at President Obama, who's, his presidency is 6 words: leading from behind, red line, JVs.
52% job rating. I mean, that's a tougher guy to run against this week, isn't it?
The red line, which you brought up earlier with General Flynn, that empowers everyone, from Donald Trump on the way down, to do whatever they need to do to remind people that you can change your mind.
But here's the problem. If you try to run on national security issues, first of all, as you said, President Obama is the most popular politician that we've discussed this morning. And secondly, Donald Trump's main gaffes this week have been on issues that touch on national security, saying, why can't we use nuclear weapons, undercutting our support for NATO, this affinity for Vladimir Putin. The mistakes he's making now go to actually the core of what Republicans used to be strong on, issues of military, issues of national security. So you're not going to win over that suburban security mom with a candidate who seems so unstable that in the new ABC Washington Post poll numbers, more than 70% say that he actually, it gives them anxiety to think of him as being the president of the United States.
Rick Scott's exactly right about the issues Republicans want Donald Trump to talk about: jobs and strong on national security. The problem is Trump did not come out of his convention convincing voters that he was a serious person, qualified to be commander-in-chief with the right temperament. He's got to work on that now. If voters don't see him as someone qualified, if voters don't see him as having the right temperament, they're not going to take his ideas on jobs, his ideas on ISIS seriously.
But how does a 70-year-old man change his entire personality? How does he change his temperament? He's 70 years old. This is who he is. He's not pretending to be this way. He actually is this way. You can't change your fundamental nature.
Part of it, the frustration with the Republicans Republicans that I'm talking to, is that he really isn't capitalizing on the fact that Hillary Clinton is also having issues. She's also having gaps. She walks out of her interview with the FBI. You have footage. You have this moment, and he go again has a gaffe. She has this issues with emails, and again here you are with this whole week. So I think Republicans are also deeply frustrated because if you look at that data download segment, it's key. It shows that they have as much issues with her issues as they do with his issues,
Flip the
but they
script.
can't.
How does a 70-year-old woman start persuading people she's telling the truth? Do we want 4 years?
Well, she's in the 70s.
Well, okay, 69. And so how does she persuade people that she's going to tell the truth when we have a lifetime in Washington doing exactly the opposite?
And I think it goes back to what Yamiche said, is that if you have issues with Hillary Clinton, the Republican nominee isn't bringing those up. He is triggered instantly by Mr. Khan. He is triggered instantly by anything he perceives as a personal slight. His narcissism outweighs his ability to do the baseline of politics. So what you do is you have Donald Trump continually making the argument about Donald Trump in the worst way.
I got to pause here because we got medals to hand out. We'll do that.
All right, so that's the round table. Fairly interesting. You can see, I think Joy Reid's in the tank for Hillary Clinton, to be honest with you. And I think Yamiche Alcindor may have Republican leanings because she slipped up and said we and then shifted over to they. Hugh Howard, he's definitely, he's not for Clinton, but he's definitely anti-Trump. And, pretty much Chuck and the other gentleman, and I forget his name, they're kind of more analytical more than anything else.